Yo, what's up, everyone? It's Legacy Shinobi here, back with another epic what if. This time, we're diving into what if Naruto was an avatar. The last airbender. Imagine Naruto dropped into a world of bending, where fire, water, earth and air rule the battlefield. How would his ninja skills and chakra powers shake up the balance? And what kind of legacy would he leave behind in a world that's so different from his own? You already know this one's gonna be legendary. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Alright, let's not waste any time, let's get straight into the story. Nearly 100 years prior, the Valley of the End hosted Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha in their final clash. Today we find the descendants of the pair, both great-grandnephews Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and Sasuke Uchiha just ended their death battle with one last attack that made the valley glow in white light. Now we find the pair laying on a rock face near the edge of the cliffs overlooking the water front, all is calm and quiet. But if you look hard enough you can see something wrong. Naruto and Sasuke still, breathing shallow and bleeding heavily from several orifices including their missing arms. Naruto's right and Sasuke's left. You were right, I understand it all now. Naruto slightly looked over at him, glad you came back to your senses. But it's the end now. Sasuke looked at him with a wide eye, what do you mean? Slowly and painfully raising his left hand over Sasuke, he summons the last of his chakra. Good thing I listened to Bachan. He chuckled lightly. Unable to move, all he could was take, but he felt his body heal slightly and then his left arm stopped bleeding. Please don't, Naruto, you can't go. He said, able to move a bit. There is nothing here for me, and I'm ready for peace. The village can go fuck itself. Oh, congrats on your and Hinata's baby. Hope it was worth it. No, this were not friends anymore. Acid. His arm went limp and he stopped breathing, his eyes dulled and he passed on. Sasuke looked down, he had truly fucked up and lost the only person he acknowledges his best friend. Tears fell from his eyes, and all he could do now was lay there, his body exhausted. Soon enough the others came and saw the pair and smiled. Till they got close enough and saw Sasuke crying, and Naruto was pale and still. They made it to him, and both Sakura and Hinata made to Sasuke first, which shocked many there. So Hinata, it is true, you chose the Uchiha over Naruto, Gaara said coldly. She flinched, but before she could speak Ino spoke in disgust. She did more than that. I thought you were better than that, but I was wrong. Hope you and Sasuke have a nice family, she said ignoring them as she went to help Naruto. Swan didn't care though, she was trying to save Naruto, but he was gone and it was like a boulder hit her. She began crying for her Gaki. She got up and looked to Gaara, let's go, can you pick up Naruto? She said the others could do what they want with Sasuke. Gaara nodded and he picked up Naruto with his hand, leaving Temari, Kankuro, Ino, Sai and a few others. Sakura had been in shock the whole time. Sasuke and Hinata were having a baby together. She felt humiliated and betrayed, so she left as well. Nothing else was said. News soon spread about the fight, and the village that had once scorned him, now mourned him. No celebration was held. It was a haunting wake-up call for those that did their best to make his life a living hell, while the golden child they worshipped had tried to bring about their destruction. Once it had been made common knowledge that he had been the son of the Yondaime, it was an even bigger blow to them. The Hyuga clan now had a scandal on their hands with Hinata pregnant with not only an Uchiha baby but a traitor Uchiha. It rocked all the clans, for they had believed she was in love with Naruto, but it turned out she had loved both boys, and she found out Naruto held the 9 tails she went for. Sasuke, she had lost all her friends by this betrayal. The fact she lied to them and in a sense played them for fools. She soon married Sasuke and moved with him into the old Uchiha compound and kept to themselves. Tsunade meanwhile ran damage control to get the village back on track, but without Naruto it didn't matter anymore, her replacement was gone. She looked out the window. A calm day, like nothing had changed, yet everything had changed. Naruto was standing in front of the other Jinchuriki, who looked at him with curiosity. Naruto? Why are we here? Gaara asked his best friend. Simple, I made a deal with Kami. You hosts who had your lives taken away will get a second chance to live. My death is your ticket back to the world of the living, this time without the Biju. They will go back home, you will keep their chakra, but that is all. Live and be at peace. This was shocking to them, like Yujito and Fu, who began crying. Rushing to him they hugged. Gaara was still sad though, his best friend wasn't coming back, and even though he didn't die he just couldn't share in their happiness right now. The girls let him go with a kiss on the cheek when Kami appeared. She said nothing but waved her hand, and several more figures appeared. Minato, Kushina, Jiraiya, Asuma, Niji, Fugaku, Mikoto, Itachi, Shisui, Rin, Hade, Obito, Hisashi, Emmett and Hinate all appeared. What is going on? Where are we? I can explain. They all looked to see Kami herself with a sad face. Because the prophecy is now complete and a soul who was not meant to die has perished, your lives have been granted a second chance to live again. You can choose to take it or not, she said to them. They looked at her confused, then she pointed to her left, and 3 were horrified by what they saw. Naruto standing there looking at them. Kushina began tearing up. Minato held his head in shame and Jiraiya sighed. She ran to him and hugged him. Why are you here? she said distraught. He said nothing, looking to Kami. I think it's better if I show you instead, she said with one finger. They all got it. They saw everything and it was not what they were expecting. One by one the others all agreed except for Kushina and Minato. Why not take this gift? Kami asked. Because without my son I have no need go back, besides if I do I will lay the village to waste, Kushina said in anger. Same with me, I am ashamed to have my face upon the mountain face, and I gave up my son for that place, I can't. I won't. Minato said as well. She nodded to them. Itachi came up to Naruto. I'm sorry for my brother. Naruto looked it dead in the eyes. You know it doesn't matter anymore. What's done is done. He nodded. Himetsune came up after. I'm sorry. I had hoped Hinata would choose you specially after you had protected her all those years ago, she said sadly to him. He shrugged. People are people, things change all the time. Well, to those who chose to return, your time has come, she said. They nodded, moving over to the former hosts. Hervey Sage, you should take Bachan out on a date, she misses you, Naruto said to Jiraiya. You bet kid, thank you for everything, he said. He nodded, then went and fist bumped both B and Gaara. Then they all vanished, leaving the Biju and his parents. Naruto-kun, well, you weren't meant to die just yet. I can give you a second chance on another world, one where the world needs a bit of help. Bor has engulfed it and their hero the Avatar need a kick in the pants to get on track to save it, she said. He looked down for a moment. Well, it was not like he had a reason to go back, so he agreed. Knowing he would need it, he fist bumped all the Biju, taking their chakra one at a time till he reached Kurama. I just want to say thanks for being my friend and for being there when I needed someone. The fox nodded with a slight grin, and as the pair fist bumped, Naruto then turned to his parents, who were sad he was going, but glad he was getting a second chance. I want you to know, having you was the great gift of my life, and I wouldn't trade a single minute of it. I love you so much, Sachi. Thank you for allowing me to be your mother, Kushina said in tears, wanting her baby to stay with her. He smiled hearing that. It was a much needed confidence boost and gave quite a bit of self-esteem as well. I'm sorry, if I had known I would never have done that to you, I would have traded the village over you, Minato said, wishing he could go back to make things right. Saying nothing, he simply came up and hugged them when all began turning white and he vanished, giving them one last smile. Kushina fell to her knee, the ache in her heart renewed, and she sobbed, unable to be with baby. The pain was terrible as Minato knelt down and hugged her. Shame was all he felt. The Biju had seen and for the first time in a long time felt true human emotion and shrunk down and hugged the heartbroken mother. Kami looked on sad for her, but she knew they would see each other again day. So she said nothing, but all they could hear was the crying of heartbroken mother who just wanted her little boy back. Naruto found himself in a forest, lots of trees and a soft cool wind blowing against a rather sunny and warm day. He looked down to see where his right arm was now replaced by a metallic arm and his orange jumpsuit destroyed. He looked over and saw his giant scroll next to him. He opened it up and found a new outfit in there for him there. The blue long-sleeved shirt with the left side being rolled up to his elbow, green pants tucked into black boots with a black battle vest, a red gauntlet glove on his right hand that goes up to his forearm, dark brown belt with 3 brown pouches holding seals, tags and medical necessities, and his special-made orange and black face mask. He took off the leaf headband and sealed it away. Unsealing weapons, he found 2 Kiba-style trench daggers and the Raijin no Ken. Placing the trench blades in his side holsters and his sword on his back, he fastened the scroll on his lower back and headed out. Being at 6'3" with blonde hair, he was gonna stick out like a sore thumb. We now meet with Aang, Katara, Sokka and the newly joined Toph, who are heading into Ba Sing Se to look for King Bumi, who was a prisoner under the Dai Li. Making their way into the city, they kept to the side streets and low profile. They looked for the old king. At the same time, Zuko and Iroh were in the city working in Iroh's tea shop. Azula, Mai and Ty Lee were on their way to see Mai's family and speak to her father, the governor of the city. Ba Sing Se was going to get rowdy very soon. Naruto found a little village where many took notice of him. Being taller than most with brightly colored hair, we find out former shinobi making his way through. He also found out they didn't speak his language, Japanese. Instead they spoke something else, Chinese. Luckily Kami gave him the knowledge to speak it and gave him the currency of this world as well, so now he wouldn't have to worry about much now. He looked around to see a shop and he went inside for some food and to relax for a moment. As he sat down and waited, the waitress came over, got his order, blushed seeing his electric purple eyes when he gave her a nice smile. Naruto looked around seeing soldiers in green, yellow and brown, but would see soldiers in red and black, making him see it was Fire Nation that has taken a hold of this place. His meal came and he enjoyed as pulled down the mask showing the girl his scar cheeks, which made her gasp, but he paid no mind to it. Finishing up and paying and heading out. Looking around, he saw there was another bigger city as he passed through this place and decided that was where the trouble would begin, and made his way to Ba Sing Se to meet the Avatar, his team and his hunters. Inside Ba Sing Se, Aang and the others were now in the catacombs, looking a way to find Bumi. Aang, you might need to face the fact we might not get the chance to see him. Sokka said. Of course you would say that. Katara spat back. The four continued on with Aang just wanting to find Bumi. Sokka annoyed by Katara and Toph for the ride. Azula finally made it to the city and headed out to her destination. Mai happy to see her family and Ty Lee along for the ride. At the same time Zhao was there as well with order from Ozai to kill both Azula and Zuko, bring back the Avatar and then wage war on the rest of Ba Sing Se and finally Amashu. Naruto was walking around the city finally having made it. It felt like he was in a place mixed of Suna and Kumo. He kept seeing Fire Nation soldiers walk around heading into catacombs under the city, but paid it no mind for now and continued on his way. The girls were now speaking to the governor speaking about normal operating procedures and such. Little they did know a certain little tyke had gotten away and was going to meet someone really important. Tom, who was just turning a year old, had made his way to an isolate sideways and was looking around with curious eyes. Well hey there little guy, how did you get out here? The baby turned and saw Naruto and gasped. He was a giant with bright colored hair. He got very excited. Naruto chuckled and picked the boy up. He looked around, seeing if he could retrace his steps, but without chakra he couldn't, so he looked at the kid and spoke. Let's go find your family. The two headed out, leaving the alleyway. A scream had been heard throughout the house as Mai's mother came in crying hysterically. Tom is missing, I can't find him anywhere, someone has taken my baby. Mai went wide-eyed as her heart dropped, her baby brother was missing. Azula and Ty Lee looked at Mai and gave her a bit of comfort. Princess, we have just seen the Avatar and his team with Tom heading into the catacombs, Zhao said. The trio nodded and headed out to go find him. To be all honest, Azula didn't care for the Avatar. She just wanted to find her older brother and mother. She didn't care for her father's campaign. But if he had taken the baby she would deliver him mainly as recompense for Mai. As the trio made their way to the catacombs they were met by Zuko and Iroh who were coming back from shopping. Zuko, Azula, Mai, Ty Lee. Why are you three heading to the catacombs? Zuko asked. Apparently the Avatar has taken my baby brother. Mai said, anger in her eyes and fear in her heart. Zuko went wide-eyed. Let me help you find him, I have been acquainting myself with the underground, he said to them. Azula nodded, they could use another body and she still trusted him. Zuko nodded to Iroh. Be careful you four, hope for the best, expect the worst, he said to them as they left. My brother is not known for family. The four were making their way down with the fire squads behind them. It didn't take very long before they caught up with the Avatar. The eight most staring each other down. You have taken the governor's infant son. We demand you give him back, Zuko said. The four looked at each other then looked at them. We don't know who that is, we have been looking for Bumi, Aang said. At first, they didn't want to believe him till Ty Lee spoke. Hey look, they don't the baby on them, see, she stated. They looked them over and went wide-eyed as it hit them. She was right. Clapping was heard behind them as they turned around to see Zhao with his men now staring them down. Till the others capture the Avatar, we just blame him for it. This shocked everyone as Zuko got Mai behind him and the other got into fighting stance. What is the meaning of this? Azula demeaned. My job, besides I lied, they didn't take the little bastard and it won't matter in a few minutes. Anyways, he smirked. As the soldiers got into Firepost Ion they heard a voice from out of nowhere. Well, now I'm glad I came down here. Stopping they looked at around then not seeing a soul. Toph on the other hand felt him and looked up pointing at the ceiling. Looking up they saw him and they were shocked to see such bright colored hair standing on the ceiling like nothing. This put everyone on guard. How is he standing up on the ceiling? What power is this? Making him chuckle as he made his way down the wall holding Tom who was now in view. So does anyone know who this little guy goes to? He asked holding up the baby boy slightly, sleeping away without care. Mai gasped and without thinking ran to them, took him into her arms and began crying. He was real and alive. Thank you for saving my baby brother, she said in tears. He nodded to her as Zuko brought them both back to their side as Naruto looked to Zhao and his men. So you're the troublemaker here, nice, been looking to let off some steam. Cracking his neck he got into his stance as the enemy began laughing. What can you do, you're but one. Fine, if you want to die so badly ill. Make that happen, kill them all except for the Avatar. As they began powering up Naruto made two sealess clones much to the shock and made hand signs. Earth style. Mud swamp. Water style. Raging dragon. Wind release. Great breakthrough. Mud appeared under the Fire Nation soldiers as they shot off their fire bending. The dragon roared to life and hit the fireballs dead on, dissolving them and the wind hitting them stuck and sending them into the wall behind them, knocking them out. Both Zhao and the others were in shock by this. He could bend more than one element and could make clones of himself. Plus he took out an entire squad in 3 hits. Wow. Sokka stated dumbly. The others were speechless by what they had just witnessed. Before Zhao could do anything, a clone hit him in the back of the neck, knocking him unconscious. The clones dissipated and Naruto looked back at his audience. He chuckled a bit but made no move to them. How did you do that? No one can bend that many elements at one time and make clones of themselves, Aang said in an excited shock. One of the many great secrets of this universe. You'll find one day. He said with an amused look. Who are you? And how are you able to do all? Katara asked calmly, coming down off of the adrenaline. Would you believe that beyond this universe there is a multiverse, other worlds. Some with powers so terrifying they defy comprehension. Others have no such thing with them living peacefully, and some whose civilizations are so far advanced it lives in the realm of science fiction, he said to them in an almost narrative manner. No one had said a word till Toph spoke, killing the moment. PFFT, yeah right, no such thing. She said dismissively. Yet you can wield elements like they were nothing, create constructs and weapons of massive destruction using fire, water, earth and air. And the Avatar contains knowledge of the past thousands of years and is for all intents and purposes a god. Why is it so far-fetched to believe the multiverse exists? He asked the Earth girl. That shut her up and made a few of them think. How do you so much about our world? From what I have seen you're not a bender. Zuko asked. Because I am not. I hail from a world that uses chakra. What you would consider power of the body and spirit. He explained, nodding to him and understanding well except for Ty Lee and Sokka who were confused by it. Mai came up to him and hugged him, shocking everyone there. She is not one for affection with exception to her friends, family and Zuko. Thank you for finding Tom Tom, he means so much to me and I love him. I don't want to know what would happen if he hadn't been found by you, she said as a couple straight tears fell from her eyes. Giving her an eye smile he nods, but what many didn't notice was Azula blushing. It's no problem, he was a good travel buddy. You know the secret to true strength is when you have something or someone precious to you, it is only then can you overcome any obstacle in your way, he said with conviction and determination in his voice. Thinking on it, many began smiling for an unknown reason. But they liked it. Nothing was said for a moment. Do you have any other strange power? Azula asked, wanting to know more about this blonde stranger. At the same time Tom Tom began waking up and looked around and saw his blonde new friend and smiled. Getting an idea, Naruto put his hands in the half-snake sign and the crystals and the other gems in the cave began glowing, pulsating and moving up and down, lightly brightening the room and made the room dance around. The others gasped, looking around to see this amazing spectacle. Mai gasped as Zuko wrapped an arm around her. Tom Tom looked on with bright eyes and a happy expression. Aang couldn't believe his eyes as he looked on. Katara was entranced by it, all her eyes sparkling like they did when she first saw the art of bending. Sokka just smiled. This feeling reminded him of his mother, and he missed her so very much. Ty Lee felt so happy in that moment, nothing could describe it. Toph could feel it as well despite her blindness, and it felt amazing to her. It was a breathtaking moment as the light danced around. Azula blushed. This felt incredible. She glanced at the blonde as he watched their faces light up, and she could tell a genuine smile was behind the mask. In that moment she looked down and gently smiled. A feeling came into her heart and butterflies in her stomach. Naruto looked at her for a moment and saw the blush and smile, and felt his heart flutter for her. He ended the jutsu and everyone headed back up to the surface. The two sides treated a truce since Azula and Zuko knew their father wanted them dead, but they had to go back to the Fire Nation for now. Naruto had brought Yumi to speak with Aang for the moment, then he had to go back. Katara, Toph, Sokka were speaking with Azula and Zuko with Mai and Ty Lee next to them and Naruto off to the side. Naruto ignored them for the moment, looking out at the scenery of Earth Country. It reminded his of Suna and Kumo, just less maintainy. He came back to see Aang come back to the others, and they said their goodbyes. Team Avatar left, got on Appa, but Naruto spoke first. Hey kid, make sure you learn what Katara and Toph teach you. You're gonna need all you can get, he said to him, serious. He nodded and they left, heading to the west of Ba Sing Se. Naruto looked back at the other four fire kids who looked back at him. What do you plan to do? Zuko asked. Well, I have spoken to Iroh and we're gonna close up shop here and take it to a Hamsu. I know you four are going back home, so be careful. I have seen men like your father and it won't end well for you, he said to them. Thank you for that, Azula stated. He nodded as he pulled out a strange-looking weapon almost like a sai, just different shaped. Hang on this, if you run into trouble, throw it down and it'll be there on a flash, he said, giving it to Azula. She blushed a bit taking it from him, and the moment her fingers touched his she felt a small charge of electricity up her spine taking it from him. We will meet again? Mai asked. She could see a friend in him. He nodded. Yeah, I have a feeling we will, till then Milady, he said with a bow before winking at her, then disappearing in wind, getting shocked looks from them. Wow, your boyfriend is pretty cool, Ty Lee said with a smirk. Azula gasped before glaring at her. He is not my boyfriend. Maybe not now, he seems to show interest in you. Plus he is like every girl's wet dream. Put him on lock before someone grabs him, Mai said to her, trying to stifling a smirk. Azula looked at her. Anything she had to say was lost as she took a look back at where the blonde was standing. Did she want a boyfriend? Was she ready to love someone? Did he feel the same way? Too much to think about. She took a breath then smiled a bit. Well, see. Are you sure? Iroh asked. Naruto nodded as the two were sitting inside his tea shop, but the detailed letters from Ozai to Zhao, stating he was to get rid of both heirs and bring back the Avatar. Any means, no matter of collateral damage. Iroh shook his head. His brother had turned into a real monster. It wasn't enough to exile him after his son's death. Now he wanted his own kids dead because they couldn't be controlled. He was very disappointed. Our corrupts, it seems. Did you find anything else? He asked. Yes, he plans to attack Amashu where their mother lives. He wants her death as well. Zhao squealed like a pig before he slipped away. He said. Iroh went wide-eyed. Ursa? No, I won't let it happen. He said, now in anger. Naruto placed on his shoulder. Then let us go and save your love and your niece and nephew. Iroh nodded, excited about seeing the girl he adored and loved even before Ozai took her away. The pair got up, closed down the shop and got ready to close it down and headed to Amashu to get ready for battle with the Fire Lord. Aang and the others were in the forest. Katara and Toph helping Aang with his water and earth bending. He had gotten the hang of water bending, but earth was a tad bit trickier as he was thinking like an airbender. Sokka meanwhile had taken notes Naruto had given him about Kenjutsu and studied them. It was much different than what he had seen, but found he was able to use it. While not to the extent Naruto could with chakra, but still he could use the moves and incorporated them into his fighting style. So they were taking Naruto's advice and getting stronger. On Ember Island we find Azula and Zuko along Ty Lee and Mai on the beach staring out at the water. They had known something was wrong with their father. Suspicious of his intent, they did what they had to for now. Azula, who sat next to Ty Lee, was lost in thought about the blonde newcomer and his extraordinary and mysterious presences as Zuko and Mai began talking about their relationship and the such. Azula was thinking about his eyes, the bright blue that made her feel like she was swimming. Closing her eyes she began blushing. Ty Lee saw this and smirked, waiting to use that later. Fire Lord Oz, I request your presence in the War Council, as servants stated. The four, broken out of their thoughts, nodded and headed to see him. You know this won't end good for us, Zuko said to Azula. She nodded, but they all steeled themselves and prepared for their fates. Two big red doors opened up and they saw him and his War Council ready in full regalia. Ozai had a smirk on his face as another stepped next to him, making both siblings look on shock. It was their older sister from Ozai's first marriage. Aitsura, she licked her lips holding a smirk on her face as well. Whatever he had planned was not going to be good for them at all. At the same time we find Naruto and Iroh were now inside of Amashu with news for the leaders. Once they had been spotted, guards stopped them as Iroh told them the news, showing them the correspondence from Ozai himself. They were escorted to the council chambers. On their way many had stopped to see the tall figure with bright blonde hair, many of whom had never seen such a color before. While several of the females blushed at his stature and physique, he would turn and look at them, giving them an eye smile, and they would turn bright red and look away. It was an incredible thing to see. Many would snicker at their contemporaries. Two doors opened and the pair along with the captain of the guard came in to C5 seated at a round table, seeing the trio come on with one gasping as she stood up looking right at Iroh. Naruto got a good look at her and saw Azula in her face, but had Zuko's darker hair color. She looked to be about mid to late 30s, but kept herself in great shape with fat in all the right places. She got out of her chair and raced to Iroh, who hugged her back. It would seem they were star-crossed lovers torn apart by whatever tradition live in this world. The other members of the council seemed happy to see Iroh as well, so at least it wouldn't be awkward. Then the throat clearing was heard and everybody came back into view of why they were there to begin with. Ah yes, I would see my brother has plans to attack Amashu, using his children as cannon fodder. With Ba Sing Se still under his thumb, this is the last stronghold of Earth Country. But the air nomads extinct and the water tribes broken and scattered. He has set his eyes on this place, but I have a trump card waiting for him. This young man who has power that can match the Avatar and in some cases exceed it is here to help us against the invasion, Iroh stated. The council, whom several had gasped hearing his words, looked to his companion, who they were equally just as shocked at. He had hair bright as the sun, was between 6'0" and 6'6", was built like a mountain. Had on a dark blue sleeveless mesh armor-like shirt with face mask with a red swirl in the middle. Black love gauntlets, dark green pants tucked into boots. He was quite the specimen, as the ladies minus the one near Iroh blushed. Reading, my name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and I am here to help you fight against the Fire Lord, he said, giving a slight bow to them. They were intrigued by him. He had an accent that was unfamiliar to them. Okay, how can you help us? The second from the left asked, worry and cynicism in her voice. Without moving an inch he made 100 clones of himself, shocking them all including Iroh. I can make copies of myself and I have several defense strategies that not only can bring down the Fire Nation's numbers, but I also have backup plans to protect the city and get both civilians and letters out of the city should the need arise, he explained. They looked at him for a few moments. They could tell he was both confident in his ability and showed he wanted to help them without a aim for himself. Okay, we agree. What would you want in recompense? The first from the right asked. Oh, nothing, I am just here to help stop this war. Keep your money and what other you may need, he said, turning back. Looking at his clones, right, we go with plan 4. Codename Whirlpool. I want it done by tonight, he said. They nodded and shined away with leaves twirling around them. He turned back to see their jaws dropped. What? Something on my face? He asked, confused, making them sweat drop. Ozai had just sent his kids along with General Ming, Commander Zhao and his southern raiders to conquer Amashu. While he stayed back and proceeded to make his firstborn the next Fire Lord. He himself crowned himself Phoenix King of the entire world, seeing as once they conquered the last Earth Kingdom. Everything was going according to plan, at least that is what he thought. He watched the airships take off. Now that they are gone, let us get you prepared for your coronation, my dear, he said to Kaitseru. She nodded to him with an evil smirk. Yes, father. The pair left, never taking in account a stranger who saved his children with power the world had never seen before. On the airship, the four remained in one of the cabins going over their own plans. Once we get inside, we find mother and leave. I will not be played like a mahjong piece, Azula said. They nodded. Don't forget Uncle Iroh and Naruto will be there too. I want to see him fight. I am really curious about his power, Ty Lee said. Azula nodded, then smiled, unconsciously gaining a smug look from Ty Lee, while Zuko raised an eyebrow at her and Mai chuckled. Breaking out of her stupor, she cleared her throat nervously, and they went over the plans once more. In the main area we see Zhao and Ming speaking. This time make sure they all die. Lord Ozai demands proof of the deed, Ming said. Zhao, who was accompanied by his son Jin, the pair nodded and looked over their own plans. As we pan to see 4 people on all black with a color lining their clothing representing a bending power: white, red, blue, green. These are specially trained assassins meant to kill off Ozai's second wife, her kids and his brother Iroh, so no one can stand against him and lay claim to his throne. In Amashu we see the Council of 5 and Iroh watch as Naruto begins laying his defenses around the city, even making several escape routes for good measure and fortifying the walls. Once done, night had fallen and the others went back to the council room where dinner was brought. Sitting at the table, they all watch as food and drink pass through his face mask in amazement. Well, I think introductions are in order, Iroh said, mainly for Naruto. The 5 nodded to him and started from the very end on the right. My name Rin Shun and I am head of the new Kaioshin warriors, she said. Naruto nodded. I am Lin Fan, Secretary of Defense for the King, Bumi, she said. I am Mei Shu and I am leader of civilian commerce and interests. I am Lo Shang and I am head of Amashu and Ba Sing Se's infrastructure. He nodded to them. And I am Ursa Lee, former wife of Fire Lord Ozai and acting caretaker of Amashu till King Bumi is back on his throne. He nodded. I am, as I stated, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the 4th Fire Shadow of Konohagakure no Sato, hero of the 4th Great Shinobi War, last of the people of Uzushi Agakure no Sato and Rikodu Sennin of this world, he said as he stood up and began powering up. His skin turned a silvery color, his hair turned white, his eyes transformed into the Mangekyo Rin Sharingan. As the 6 black balls hovered over him, 2 horns appeared on his forehead and he held Hagoromo's staff in his left hand. This made everyone gasp out, looking at him, their eyes widened in total shock. You're not from this world, are you? Rin asked him. He shook his head. No, I am from a different dimension altogether, but I was asked to be here by Kami herself. I am here to restore balance to this world, and once the Avatar has beaten the Fire Lord and this world is at peace again, my job will be done, he stated to them. They nodded to him as he withdrew the power and looked normal again. What do you mean, will you leave here? That I do not know, for I cannot look into the future, but no, I will not leave. I like this world, it fascinates me. But don't get wrong, I am not immortal and will die when it is my time. They nodded, all staying silent as there was nothing else to say. But the overload of information, they went to bed for the night needing the sleep. Naruto wasn't tired just yet, so he stayed up. Going to the top of the building, he looked out at the night sky. The stars were shining bright and looked like they dancing around. He brought a smile to him. It felt much different than once before, when he was younger, looking up begging for his prayers to be answered. Can't sleep. He turned a bit and saw Ursa there walking up to him, in a robe-like kimono, as she sat next to him. Not really, I figured you would be with Iroh right now, he said. She smiled. I couldn't sleep. I have been thinking about my children. I miss them, she said. Oh, Azula and Zuko. I met them in Ba Sing Se. Nice kids but diffidently rough around the edges, he said as she sat next to him. She nodded. Yes, I could see that. Their father never really cared for them. Our marriage was political only, as I was the only child of earthbending royalty. I am King Bumi's grandniece. I wish I would go back and fight against it all and have married Iroh instead, she said. He nodded, not wanting to pry too much into her life. What is the life of a shinobi? She asked him, wanting to know. Not too much different from all this, only civilians can come into great power. We don't bend the elements, we have what is called chakra and can gain affinities like earth, air and water. But we also have special eyes called Denatsu. There's several, the Rinnegan, Tensegan, Byakugan, Sharingan and such, each have their own powers and abelites. Then we have what are called Biju or tailed beast, creatures of extraordinary power. At one time are 9 people able to contain them as such, but with all power it does contains drawbacks and other negative connotations. Naruto said to her. Ursa was fascinated by all of this, she wanted to learn more this in him, but she would have plenty of time, for right they had a battle to win first. You fascinate me, I hope to learn more about you and your world, but for tonight we should try and sleep. She said getting up. Good night Naruto and thank you for all your help, she said heading back down to finally be with her true love. Naruto looked back up at the sky, saying nothing wondering what will happen after this. Fire Nation airships were also en route. They were nearing their destination for the battle that would decide Itamashu. Team Avatar were also en route as they wanted to speak to Bumi's temporary replacement. The next several hours would see a very interesting battle and showcase Naruto's awesome and frightening power. Naruto was up before the others going around checking the fortifications, walking around enjoying calm breezy day. The people who stop and stare at him, he was nothing like they had seen before. Bright colored hair and eyes, taller than most of the men there and built like a solid stone wall. He gained many looks from the single girls, and married women would watch him in fascination, with a few giggling thrown at him when he would walk by. Of course it didn't help that he had on a white muscle shirt, white pants and white shinobi shoes. Walking around the girls got eye candy, and the boys were semi-jealous. But since they didn't try to make a move let it go. We now see him making his way back to check in and make food. He was hungry now. Once inside he found the kitchen with ease and began making breakfast. Looking around he found special spices and was intrigued by how they would taste. After about an hour and a half the high command began waking up and got ready. Making their way to the mess hall they were bombarded with fragrance and umami. They saw a table set and food was being placed on the table. "Ah, good morning. Breakfast is served," he said. They sat and enjoyed delicious food. Even the Kaioshin warriors who ate happily and blushed and giggled at the blonde-haired man except Ursuki who was waiting for her Sokka, but she did enjoy the food. After breakfast, they got ready and were now on alert. The Fire Nation was on its way and no chances were being taken. Getting ready they went to their positions around Amashu. They couldn't afford to lose like they did at Ba Sing Se. Fire Nation airships. The sun now shining overhead, we are Zuko, Azula along with Mai and Ty Lee. But they were not looking forward to this but have no choice. Do you think she will be there? Azula asked her brother. I hope so. I don't want another dead end, he said. The four looked out at the horizon up on the deck, they would be at Amashu in an hour. Team Avatar. On Appa they overlook the mountains and see the beginning of the desert, many had mixed emotions. I can't wait to see Suki again, Sokka said softly to himself. Really? Toph said incredulously. What? I am excited. Aang, are you okay? Katara asked him concerned. He said nothing at the moment, but he turned his head to her and nodded. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want for any of this. But still they made their way onwards, flying to ground zero. Naruto was now on the roof, meditating looking out for nature energy which he found plenty of as this world was rich with it like his. Once done he stood up and stretched out getting some nice cracks out. He then made his signature cross-sign and in a puff of smoke changed into his battle attire. The black battle vest and face mask with a red yuzu swirl on the back, blue gauntlets, green pants and blue shinobi boots. His hair swaying in the wind as he looked off and saw several black blots appear on the horizon. They're here. The Fire Nation arrived, and they brought another wall driller like with Ba Sing Se. Once it dropped causing a loud ruckus and an aftershock that rocked the city. It powered up and began moving to the wall against the desert. The city guard and the Kaioshin warriors were now at the wall as the driller came up and began a job of making a hole in the defense. At the same time Zhao, Jin, Ming, Zuko, Azula, Mai and Ty Lee as well as the Southern Raiders and the Phoenix Elite, who found a back entrance into the city. Right, our goal is simple, look for the council and arrest them, Ming said. Nodding they left and quickly with the help of a map, found the building they were looking for. Wasting no time, they headed onwards passing by little to no resistance as the Southern Raiders were busy with the defense of the city. Team Avatar were also now in the city, but they had not expected this so they were caught off guard. What should we do? Katara asked. We need to stop the drill, then help the Earth forces, Sokka said. Making the most sense they did so going for the drill. Sokka, having pulled out his Kiba blades courtesy of Naruto and was going off on the grunts while helping a few Kaioshin along the way. Aang and Toph grounded in and began using earthbending to move the drill away. But then they noticed the wall, the drill wasn't going into the rock, it was lightly bouncing off it, with sparks flying off. Katara found a lake nearby and used the water to attack the surrounding firebenders, which was quite tricky as they kept replacing fallen comrades. We need to stop the drill first, since we can't move it while it is in motion, Toph said. Aang nodded and they went inside and got to work breaking the engine. Sokka finished off several of his opponents and was taking a breather. Sokka. He turned and saw Suki in her outfit, he smiled as she raved to him and they hugged. It had been several weeks since they had seen each other. Ignoring the background for a moment they shared a small kiss, happy to be in each other's arms again. The party had made it inside, passing the corridors till they found the main doors and pushed them open. There we see the council, Iroh, several Kusohi and Naruto. "Ah, we finally found you," Zhao said. "By order of the Phoenix King, you are to be charged with treason and executed." This got the siblings to look at him in shock. "What?" Azula screamed slightly. Jin nodded to the elite and they were behind the four, restraining them with blades against their necks. Ursa gasped and was gonna charge, but Naruto stopped her. He said nothing to her at first. He gave her an eye smile. "I'll handle this." She narrowed her eyes but knew he could, so she backed off. "Oh, and how do you plan on doing that?" Jin sneered. Naruto gave an eye smile, "Like this." He made 4 clones and switched places with the captives in the blink of an eye. Now the elite had Naruto on them, while the 4 took his place next to Ursa and Iroh. Naruto chuckled, "Let's dance." At the same time, the council and Iroh charged into to take on the leaders, while Naruto fought the elite, leaving Ursa and the 4 kids to look on as this had stunned them all. They could really watch the show when a barrier came up for their protection. Naruto looked at his 4 opponents, neither held facial expressions. The 4 got into their bending stances. "We are the elementals, we serve the Phoenix King. The world will be remade in flames," the firebender said, being the obvious leader. "This world is amazing as is, diversity is a must for a healthy ecosystem. I deem Ozai unsuitable to rule and will have him dethroned, and nothing will stop the Avatar from completing his mission. Now then, let us begin," Naruto said, placing one hand behind his back like Lee, the whirlwind leaf. Iroh and the council are now locked in combat, well, mainly just Iroh, who was wanting to relive some tension. Right now we see the Golden Dragon taking on Ming, Zhao and Jin. "So we have the honor of facing you? This will fun," Jin said in contempt. Iroh said nothing as he got into his stance. He would help make sure Naruto changed this world. It was time those that had helped divide this world be put in the past, so those like Zuko and Azula could bring a new age to this world. The 3 made their move and began attacking Iroh, who had not only more experience, but was more powerful, so this was no contest. Wind style. Wind bullets. Naruto shot off several rounds at the enemy as he charged ahead and began the Taijutsu bout. He wasn't playing games, he was gonna take them out quickly. To be honest, it was sad. Most here were not at his level, but he couldn't be sad about not having a challenge. He really wasn't in the mood for another Sasuke, and he wouldn't give in to his Uzumaki genes, the blasted need for combat and strong opponents. The firebender was first. He made his way to Naruto, who dodged the flaming punch sent his way, kicked him as the waterbender came in for a spin kick, which he blocked with his hand. Pushing him away, Naruto sensed a sneak attack and took the legs out and did a kick to the chest and saw the earthbender go flying, but was caught by surprise from the airbender. Though Ozai exterminated all of the air nomads. He said nothing, but then he looked at the eyes and made a horrible discovery. The 4 benders he is currently fighting, their eyes looked like Zuko's, and turned Ozai as he noticed Azula had her mother's eyes. "Oh, I see you're not a nomad, just another one of Ozai's fallen angels," he said sadly, but the anger was in his eyes. He knew that the man knew and went wide-eyed. "Elementals were leaving. We have been compromised," he said to them. They nodded and vanished like real ninja would, making Naruto realize they weren't playing around. He turned back to see members of Ozai War Council now on the ground. He then looked over to see Azula hugging her mother and crying, as was Zuko, while Ursa was smiling like an idiot, cooing to her babies, with Mai and Ty Lee smiling. Naruto made a clone and he left. He had a few errands to run. The battle had ended and the Fire Nation had been beaten back because of Naruto. He gave the city the fire it needed to fight again. The airships take off with Min, Zhao and Jin being left behind. Team Avatar met up with the others and spoke with each other. While Naruto was looking at the driller. All the research and invention wasted on war, how sad. He said to himself. Activating Biju Sage mode, he made a construct of the Kyuubi and lifted into the air, shocking the people who were watching. Picking up the war machine, he tossed it into the air and made a Biju Dama, sending it at the machine, which made it explode for all to see and hear. Once done, he cut the power and floated back down to the ground, met by the others who looked at him with slack jaws. "What?" he asked. "What the hell was that?" Sokka asked, baffled. "My power, using it to destroy the fire driller," he said calmly, but was laughing at their faces on the inside. "I have never seen power like that before." "How?" Aang said in shock. "What you saw was chakra, that is my power. I can control the elements with it and much more," he said as walked up to Zuko and the other 3. "You 4 alright?" he asked. They nodded. "How did you do that?" Ty Lee asked. "Clones and substitution can do wonders," he said. "The Fire Nation has lost this day, but they will be back," Katara said as the others nodded. "And we will be waiting for them. Till then, who's hungry?" Ozai and Kaitseru were reading over the reports and were not pleased. "It seems they have a powerful ally. If he was able to best the elementals so easily," he said, putting the letter away. "I think we should meet this warrior," she said seductively. She liked strong men, and if the descriptions were true. He nodded. "Make ready my ship, we leave for Amashu in 3 days." The Mashu was now celebrating their victory against the Fire Nation, with exception of Naruto as he sat up on a wall overlooking the city. He was never one for partying even after pain. He enjoyed going home, reading a book, drinking tea and being left to his thoughts. He gained this after his 3-year trip when he stopped looking for recognition from the village or his peers. All around he could hear, laughing, talking, singing and the above. But he paid it no mind, his thoughts now were on those 4 he met. Ozai has been a busy little monster it seems. So not one for parties huh? He glanced up from his book, behind him slightly to see Azula walking up from behind to sit down next to him as they overlooked the surrounding city, bright lights and bright souls. No never big on this. I prefer quiet nights in. He said. She nodded, I want to thank you for saving us today if you hadn't been able to save us. She stopped. It's fine, no need to thank me. Besides I'm sure your mother was more thankful he said. She nodded with a smile, yeah. I haven't hugged my mother in years. It felt really nice actually she said with a smile. He nodded saying nothing else. The two sat there watching the festivities go on for a while longer in a comfortable silence. Next morning went as normal, Naruto doing his morning exercise routine. Though because it was spring going into summer it was still warm in the morning, and since he was wearing all white the sweat stuck to his body and showed his godly physique to all those who looked on. Many of the ladies blushed and grew heavy blush as they watched him. At first he was confused then it hit him and he went pale as his left eye twitched. At the same time the others had gotten up as well and were greeted to the sound of a terrified scream, thinking they were attacked grabbed their weapons and headed out the front doors only to come upon quite the sight. Team Avatar and the Fire Rebels watched poor Naruto scream for his life arms flailing behind with his pants and shirt now ripped and missing the ladder's case as a horde of fangirls chased after him. Iroh gave a small prayer for his blonde compatriot while Ursa was giggling at his expense. Zuko shivered, thankful it wasn't him. Mike cracked a smirk at him. Ty Lee was on the ground rolling and Azula had an eyebrow raised at his misfortune with a small glare at the females. Aang felt bad for him, Katara was worried for his safety, and Toph, Suki and Sokka were dying, tears in their eyes also on the ground rolling. They watched him race from one side to the other being chased, trying to dissuade the girls, which didn't work, so he brought out Plan B and made several clones while he made his escape. While the clones led the girls away, he made his way to the house getting inside and slamming the door shut. Panting, his skin pale with ripped pants on he looked at amused faces. Rough day at the office? Sokka asked him making the other laugh. Oh ha ha ha. He said sarcastically tilting his head left to right while speaking. While they all laughed at his expense he muttered none too kindly about stupid fangirls and hilarious Eskimos. But they all stopped when they saw the scars, as well as several words carved into his skin and were horrified by it but said nothing to him for now. Once showered and changed he came down and made breakfast for the house. How were aquiver with anticipation. Iroh, Suki and Ursa having had his food knew already. The four watched in amusement as the others began to try it. As the newbies took the food into their mouths and chewed they all stopped and went wide-eyed even Toph. Their minds had shut down, this was amazing and delicious, never had they have such exquisite food. Hatter, Ty Lee and Toph began shaking, Sokka and Aang began devouring it. Zuko and Azula stopped and looked at Naruto, who gave them an eye smile and eat as well. Ozai and Kaitsura looked out at the horizon ahead seeing they were now in Earth country looking out at the vast landscape, seeing future Fire Nation expansion here. Bulkai was thinking about this newcomer. She was always attracted to strong men, both physically and in their power, wondering what he would look like as they got no diffident answers. The ship continues on its way heading for Amashu. Naruto was sitting up in a tree, reading one of Jiraiya's orange books, but unlike Kakashi didn't giggle at it. He wanted to understand Jiraiya a bit better, and this was the only way now. Finishing the book he put it away and looked out at the scenery before him. What ya doing? He looked down to see Aang looking up at him, coming down he dusted himself off. Just reading at the moment, what's up? The others wished to speak to you, he said grimly walking away. He narrowed his eyes, he figures they saw his scars and wished to speak to him about it. Dreading it, but wanting to get this over with he sighed and headed to see them. They were sitting at the table with troubled looks. I don't feel like we should intrude, if he wants to tell us, Sokka said. Before anyone could say anything Naruto and Aang appeared. Aang taking his seat. You all wish to know about my scars right? Some went wide-eyed while others nodded stoically. He sighed again taking off his battle vest and finally his shirt and gauntlet off. They all sat there in shock and disbelief, some were white and old while others were red and new. Ursa gasped, placing a hand to her mouth while Iroh sighed. Katara, Ty Lee, Mai and Suki were wide-eyed with various reactions. Zuko flinched, Aang cringed, Sokka closed his eyes, and Toph couldn't see so nothing. Azula looked on with sad eyes, seeing just how bad it was. They also saw various words carved into his body. Murderer, demon, monster, dead last, worthless and several others. She got up and came over to him with tears in her eyes as she traced her finger over one on his chest where his heart is, like it had been punched through. Why? How? She asked. The day of my birth a great beast of pure unimaginable power was unleashed on my village. With no other option, the leader of my village had to seal the beast into a vessel. I was chosen at the cost of his and his wife's lives. As the years proceeded on, the villagers who couldn't tell the difference between the blade and scroll it was sealed in or didn't care unleashed their hate upon me. From the time I was 3, I was hunted like an animal, denied basic rights, forced to fend for myself, and lived on the streets with the threat of death on a daily basis. Being an orphan with no knowledge of my backstory, I had no real identity for many years. What you see is the evidence of those long and dark years, he said. The revelation was earth-shattering. It made a few of them sick. No one should have suffered this much in their lives, and it made their lives seem tame by comparisons. He put his shirt, gauntlet and vest back on. I made my peace with it long ago. Besides, they can't hurt me anymore, and I look to the future, not the past, he said. Azula came up and hugged him, feeling horrible for him, like she was the one who hurt him. It took him by surprise, but hugged her back as well. Nothing else was said until Naruto jerked his head east suddenly. I feel dark energy coming this way, he said. It is my younger brother, he must know of you now, Iroh said. He nodded, then I shall go meet him and see what he wants. The ships landed outside the wall of Amashu, where they were met by others. Ozai looked at all who were there, seeing his older brother, ex-wife, kids and their friends along with the Avatar. I see you're all still here, guess he'll have to try harder, he said with a cruel smirk. They all glared at him, his children more so. Now where is the golden-haired warrior? I wish to meet him. Appearing in a swirl of leaves, he showed himself. The two now got a good look at him. The blue shirt, purple pants, blue boots with a green battle vest, and a blood-red glove gauntlet on, his right arm going up to his elbow, and an orange and black face mask covering the lower half, and looked to be about 6'3" and built like a brick wall. Kaitsura licked her lips. She wanted him. Azula saw this and glared angrily at her. She was not taking him from her. She then blinked and blushed from thinking like that. So you're the one who bested my elementals? You're not what I expected. It happens. Why don't you join us? Together we could bring an era of peace to this world. Under one banner, Ozai offered. This shocked them, except for Iroh and Ursa. I'm afraid I can't. You see, this world needs more diversity and difference of opinion. There are 4 ways of life here, and that needs to be brought back, and I plan to make sure that happens. Sazan's tyranny will be snuffed out, and the Avatar will be the one to end this war. So I must decline, he said. This annoyed Ozai greatly, but Kaitsura was turned on. She liked him more. Pity, then you will die with the rest of the trash here, he said, powering up. Before anyone could get into defense, Naruto sighed. King Ozai, stand down, you're out of your league. There needs not be unnecessary bloodshed. I can't let you ruin my plans for this world. I will finish what Sazan started. Shaking his head, he vanished and reappeared in front of the king, grabbing his head and slamming it down hard into the ground, knocking him out. All who saw were shocked by this. He took down Ozai in one hit. Many still hadn't blinked either. Kaitsura did and gasped. He was much stronger than thought. So she swung her fist at him, but he dodged it and caught her fist. You seem much like your father, full of nothing good. Pity you. Would have made someone very happy one day as a wife and mother, he said to her. She smirked at him, bring a blade out, slicing him across the face, mainly the bridge of his nose, as blood hit her in the face as well. But Naruto never let go and glared at her. That was not nice. Too bad you're goody two shoes. You are just the man I look for. Strong, powerful and mysterious, she said, coming up and staring at him. In another life, perhaps. He let go and she backflipped away from him as several men brought Ozai to the ship and they took off. Well, meet again, stranger, she said seductively to him with a wink. He sighed, narrowing his eyes as the ship took off. He looked back at the others as his wound began healing, showing steam from it till a scar similar to Iruka's was seen. Azula looked at him curiously, but with a bit of jealousy as well. As they headed back inside the walls of the city, the battle is won for now, giving them breathing room. But the war is far from over. In the back garden, Naruto sat in meditation, centering himself, but he could feel the trouble from a few of the others inside the house, but continues on with his business. Once this fight with Ozai is done, then other things can be worried about. Ignore the stuffed animal. In the coming days after meeting Ozai and Kaitsura, things calmed down. At the moment, Team Avatar was training and getting themselves better at their crafts. Ty Lee had joined the Kaioshin and Zuko and Mai. Well, they had broken up. They felt it was better this way and found they liked others instead. Zuko liked Katara and Mai fancied Sokka. Go figure. What shocked them all the more was Katara felt the same about Zuko, and Suki agreed to share Sokka with Mai. Aang didn't really care anyways. Ty Lee was in love with Toph and Azula. Well, she felt complicated. What Naruto had said, although in sarcastic jest, struck deep inside her and she felt jealousy because of that and kind of ghosted the blonde. But she didn't mind at all, as he didn't really know her and now she was getting reacquainted with her mother. Ursa though knew she felt a lot for the newcomer and surprised to this. Iroh told her to let it go and let them deal with the problem, which she reluctantly agreed to. Right now we find Azula, Mai, Katara, Suki and Ty Lee spying on Naruto as he goes about the village. Walking along he get bumped into by a little girl no older than 3, but looked like a year old. He looks down as she has a few cuts and bruises, and she has been crying. She looked in a bad way. All of a sudden several older children turn a corner and throw rocks, not realizing Naruto was there, and hit the little in the back, cutting her back open as she cried out in pain. Get out of here, fire freak. No one wants an orphaned little brat around, you should just die. Yeah. Naruto had enough and released his bloodlust, which terrified them as well as those around, making them freeze in fear as he picked up the crying child and healed her wounds. As she looked malnourished and pale, she fell unconscious in his arms. You 6 have 10 minutes to tell me why you decided to pick on this little girl. If you don't, or it's not a good enough reason, I will personally make sure they never find your corpses, he said with a low monotone voice with a serious tone, his eyes showing no light. This shocked everyone around him and those spying. This was new to them. He was aggressive and harsh. It made a couple frown at him. Well, I am waiting, he said, changing his eye blood red with slits in them. We don't like Fire Nation orphans here, one said shakily but stubbornly as well. Yeah, she is Fire Nation, for all we know she is a spy. Holding her could be a trap, old man. His eye twitched. I should have no biased arrogance is at play here. Granted, she probably is from the Fire Nation. But look at her, she is homeless, starving, had probably been beaten by the trash here, and you expect me to believe that she could pose a threat to you at death's door? He said with a harsh tone and raised voice, looking at them like they were stupid. This made several people flinch as he walked to the kids as they whimpered in fear, but he stopped a few feet in front of them and held out the little girl in front of him. Evil is not born, it is taught. Your actions have proven that fact. If she did somehow survive, she would have become the evil I am trying to stop. Did you ever think about that? Or the fact she is an innocent child no more than any of you who has been caught up in a war by a monster? I have spilled more blood in my life that drowned this city 5 times over, he said. This caught many people's attention as they were learning more about him now and weren't as afraid of him for the moment. His spies were in shock hearing this, but was also right on many levels. It was deep. You stand there as proud creatures of the Earth Kingdom. Yet act no better than the tyrants of the Fire Nation, willing to kill innocents because they came from another place than you. This is the kind of complacency that needs to be swept away, because instead of trying to kill this little girl, you could have saved her, gave her a home and love, and you would have not only saved her life, but gave her a new direction, one that could help bridge the gap that Ozai has created. That is what real heroes do. So what would you be? A real hero who doesn't raise a blade against another human, or a false hero and become the monster you trying to destroy? He said, letting go of the bloodlust, placing the girl back onto his chest, and took her home. This was a deep though that many were now thinking about. While many were confused, some understood it, but gave everything something to think about. Azula was shocked by this, for him to defend the little girl so quickly, but it also made her glad to see as well. It made her smile slightly. Wow, it seems we are still learning more about him all the time, Mai said. They nodded and headed back to the home to see. Naruto brought the child home and got to cleaning her up. He saw all the cuts, bruises, scars, and it broke his heart and made him enraged. Once cleaned up and in some fresh clothing, he laid her in his bed and sat on his chair nearby and began reading a book, waiting for her to wake up. He made a clone to make her food as well. Going downstairs, he was met by Ursa and Iroh, who were both curious and surprised by him bringing home that little girl. Who is that? She asked, her motherly instincts kicking in. The little girl who was about to be killed by the more of your non-amusing citizens here, he said, going to the kitchen. He then explained to them everything, and it was likely though. They were angry, disappointed, and proud to hear him speak about the speech he gave. He was different and it was a very good thing. He went into the kitchen and made food, little things she would be able to eat. He remembers what it was like being her, only he didn't really have anyone there for him. Looking back now, the old man cared only enough. He had been completely alone, and it reevaluated many of his thoughts. At the same time, everyone was back home, now curious as the girls told the others about what he had done. They wanted to know why he felt so strongly about it. At the same time, Naruto noticed the little girl began stirring as he put his book away and waited. Slowly her eyes fluttered. She looked around and saw she was in a place she didn't recognize and became afraid. Have no fear, young one. You're safe here, Naruto said softly to her. She looked over to him and gasped. He had really bright hair and was really tall. Duo, she said softly. Hello, I am Naruto. I saved you from those kids. I heard you're an orphan, is that true? He asked her. She nodded with tears appearing. They left me alone here, she said, her little voice cracking. His heart broke for her as he slowly got up and came to the bed and sat down, and he hugged her. She simply cried into him, wondering why her mommy and daddy left alone. He said nothing but held her little frame to him and comforted her. Soon enough the others all came, seeing the little girl awake. Everyone had heard her speak and it made them sad for her, especially Ursa, who cursed the parents of this little angel. Naruto gently combed his fingers through her hair as she sobbed into him, not caring about being damp. Azula was shocked to see this, he was showing so much tender care for this baby in his arms. The others thought it was cute. Katara laid in Zuko's arms. Suki and Mai laid their heads on Sokka as well as he wrapped his arms around him. Balong nodded. Ty Lee smiled seeing it and Azula blushed. At the thought of a child both she and Naruto had done something and how fatherly he would be to her. "You're a good man, not many care for the plight of the innocent," Iroh said. "They should, this could be them one day and not know it besides. I was in her place many years ago, an orphan no one wanted. By the time I was her age I had more attempts on my life, and after I turned 6 all I could do was heal," he said to them, not looking at them but the little girl. The moment they heard that they froze. Was he saying what they thought he was saying? Toph and Ong were confused by this. Ursa thought looked at him horrified. "Is that true?" she asked, dreading the answer. He nodded. "On my world Jinchuriki are seen as lower than dirt. I wouldn't wish my life on anyone, not even Ozai," he stated. This got to them, cause it must have been really bad if he said that with conviction. Azula slowly came up and sat next to him looking at the little girl on his arms. "What will you do with her?" she asked. "Adopt her, as an orphan who never had a family of his own. This little girl needs not only lots of love and care, but it would be good for me as well. I could use something to love for after this war is over, and having a little girl of my own to love and protect would be just the thing my broken soul needs," he said, looking down at her smiling under face mask, seeing she fell asleep again, but wouldn't let her go. Iroh and Ursa looked at him with surprise but smiled as well, glad he would care for this child. He was much wiser than they thought and showed his character had much more depth than seen before. They would have if he didn't. The other, while surprised, felt a new respect for him. Raising a child was no easy feat, but he seemed like he wanted it and was ready for it. "Sweetie, wake up please," he said softly to her. She groaned a bit but opened her eyes, rubbing them cutely, which made the girls minus Toph at her. She looked up at the man who saved her and smiled. "Thank you Naruto," she said. He nodded. "I have to ask, what is your name?" "I don't know, I wasn't taught. I don't think my mommy and daddy wanted me," she said with sadness. The other also looked on sadly at her, but Naruto felt rage if he meets her parents. "Well, I want to adopt you, and you be my daughter, would you like that?" he asked her. She gasped in shock. "You want to be my daddy?" she asked shakily. He nodded. "I would love to be your father. I always wanted a child of my own, and now I have you," he said with an eye smile. Her bottom lip quivered and tears left her eyes as she hugged and quietly cried. He wrapped his arms around her and kissed her little head. "And I will name you Hikari, which means light in my native tongue, because you will be the light in my darkness," he said to her. Her little hands gripped him tightly, afraid he would disappear if she let go. There were no dry eyes as they watched this heartwarming scene. No words could describe the respect Naruto had earned then and there. Azula felt her heart flutter for him as well. It was no secret from her mother and the girls she fancied him, but now she felt that small spark of love, seeing that he would be a good father as well, which made her blush slightly. She came over and sit next to them, looking at the little girl with a small smile. Hikari looked over at her with big watery eyes. "Hi pretty lady," she said shyly. Azula blushed madly. No child had ever said that to her before, but she liked it. "Hello Hikari, I am Azula," she said softly as to not scare her. Hikari smiled at her too. "Yuri oi pretty, like a mommy," she said, not thinking. Ursa gasped while Iroh chuckled. Her friend snickered at her. Azula stuttered and turned bright red, turning away for a minute. Hikari looked at her concerned. She thought she said something wrong. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you mad. Please don't be mad at me," she said in tears and shaking. Naruto hugged her tightly as Azula heard and went wide-eyed. "No, you didn't make me mad, sweetie. You just surprised me is all. I didn't expect it. Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you," Azula said, taking her hand and placing it gently against her head, caressing it. "You mean it?" she asked. She nodded. "Yes, I am." Stopped shaking and smiled at her again, which made Azula's stomach feel like the butterflies were gonna burst forth. "Hikari, would you like Azula as your mommy?" Naruto asked with a slight tease. Azula and the others looked at him in shock and surprise, the former going wide-eyed. She looked up at Naruto with stars in her eyes. "Really, she can," she said so excitedly. "If she would like to be, yes," he said. Azula glared at him stubbornly while Hikari's head was turned. But deep down she also squealed as well. She fell in love with this little girl the moment they locked eyes. Then Hikari turned to her with hope in her eyes. Azula and the others witnessed their first puppy dog eye no jutsu from her, and she wasn't trying to use it at all. They had no defense against it, and even Zuko broke from it. Azula took a deep breath and smiled. "Yes, I would love to be your new mother," she said. Hikari moved from her spot and came up and hugged Azula, which took her back, but she soon hugged her as well. "Thank you mama," she said with a smile and a newfound happiness in her heart. Ursa internally squealed with her hands to her heart. She had her first grandbaby. She and the others came up and sat on the couch and chairs nearby. Hikari looked over at the older lady who looked a lot like Azula. "Who are you pretty lady?" she asked. Ursa blushed. This little girl was too adorable. "I am your new grandmother dear," she said with a soft smile, her eyes showing a gentleness and care. Hikari gasped in surprise with a head tilt. "What's a grandma?" She didn't know what that was, but she felt safe being around her. Ursa heard her heart break from that and told her all about it, making the little girl look at her in awe. She moved from Azula, but not before giving her a kiss on her cheek as she waddled to Ursa. As the older women picked her up and hugged her, Azula felt her cheek and smiled brightly at her new little girl, watching her mom dote on her with hugs and kisses, hearing the little girl giggle, which made her grandmother squeal again. After feeding her, she got spend time with others, getting to know them all. She liked them all, especially Appa. He was fluffy. Momo was weary around her for now. For the first time ever she felt wanted and loved. They didn't give her any negative vibes. While Naruto, Azula and Ursa became especially protective of her and made that known when he and Azula were walking around with her, and several drunks earthbending soldiers saw her and knew she was Fire Nation child and wanted her out of their city. The trio had been confronted not too far outside Ursa's home. So why is that fire brat here? One said angrily and very inebriated. Naruto moved Azula behind him while she hugged Hikari to her to help keep her calm and feel protected away from malicious eyes. She is my daughter and she has done nothing wrong, so back off. Your drunkenness is unbecoming of an Earth soldier, Naruto said, standing up to the group who at most were 5'9", 5'10". While the numbers game would give the advantage, this was not the case for Naruto. They didn't move but postures up on him defiantly, speaking badly about her and Azula. Azula, turn around and cover Hikari's eyes, please, he said, never turning around. She did so and after a few moments heard horrid sounds of screaming the silence. She turned back and saw the soldiers on the ground along with several civilians, their faces pale with silent screams etched on their faces. What did you do? She asked. Oh, just showed the darker side to sunsets, he said cryptically. Ozai was in his study, his eyes glaring at the documents before him. All on this newcomer Naruto who they knew nothing about. There was nothing on his history, background, power. It was like he appeared put of thin air. Aitsura was in her room thinking on this man, and she liked what she saw. She just now had to find a way to beat him and break him and make him all hers. Kill her pathetic half-siblings, and she would be the rightful ruler of this world. Going to sleep, she had many thoughts about him, many of them naughty. Synth leader of the elementals along with his brothers were training, getting ready for the next time they meet him. How had he figured it out so quickly? It made no difference, they were tasked with killing him and all who oppose Lord Ozai. They needed to figure out a weakness and exploit it. In Namashu we see an incredible sight. Azula, Zuko and the others along with Hikari are watching a magic show being performed by Naruto using his power. Standing in front of them, his hands out, one side was an electric dragon gliding around his arm, the other was a miniature figure of the Uchiha's acclaimed Susanoo made from ice, and the pair were battling it out like puppets with Naruto using chakra strings. Kankuro taught him. Hikari was enthralled seeing her daddy's power, her eyes aglow with such awe. Azula was as well, holding the 3-year-old in her arms, watching with a small smile as she would glance down every so often at the child in her arms. Seeing the light show made want to squeal like a girly girl. Momo and Appa were just as enthralled, never before having seen anything like it before. Katara leaned into Zuko with a smile, his arms wrapped around her, kissing her head, and the couple enjoyed the show with amusement. Sokka, Suki and Mai were gasping at the power he held, hands held tight in wonder. Ai Li was smiling, eating some popcorn Naruto made, as was Toph, whose eye were now not the white, milky clouds anymore, but were now a brown-green color, not truly hazel, next to her as well. Love was in the air for most of them. Naruto had healed her eyes so she could see for the very first time ever, and it changed her life drastically. Ursa and Iroh sat behind them and snuggled up with a light blanket watching the show. She would glance at all her children and see the wonder and amazement in their eyes and would catch real smiles on their faces like when they were younger. It was like the last few years had all but disappeared. She felt complete again. Then she would look at Hikari as well and giggle at her face. It was too adorable no matter what. She would never be able to explain to the newcomer how grateful she is for all he has done. He saved her babies, brought their old selves back and gave her a grandbaby. She knew she could trust him and she would from here on out. After the pair of creations had finished their battle, they soared high into the air and bursted into a magnificent fireworks display for them. Once done, they clapped for him as he bowed. Thank now I have but one last thing for the night, he said as he pulled out a little bag and placed it onto the ground. Iroh, I will need a drop of your blood for this, he said, coming up to him. Confused, he did so, and Naruto brought it back to the little sack, giving a drop of his blood as well, and dropped both sets onto the sack. Then made 100 hand signs as his eyes morphed into the Rinnegan and slammed his hands down. Uzumaki Arts, Rin Rebirth. Gift of life. The blue light came from the bag, while the others watched in shock and awe. Once done, the bag vanished and took the form of a young man. When the light finally died, he stood before them with several looking on in shock. Iroh gasped with wide eyes, his son was standing before him. Liu Ten opened his eyes and looked around, seeing quite a few people, then noticed his father and went wide-eyed. Father, Liu Ten. Iroh got up and ran to him, hugging him. He was real and let go his tears of joy. As did his son. Ursa and her kids were in complete shock as well as they looked from Iroh and Liu Ten over to Naruto, who was sweating a bit and lightly breathing heavy. He gave an eye smile as Hikari got and waddled to him. "You okay, daddy?" she asked, concerned with a look of worry. He nodded to her, picking her up in his arms. "Yes, I am. Darling, that technique takes a lot out of me, but don't worry. It'll be fine," he said, petting her head as she nodded to him with a concerned face. Iroh broke away from his son and looked at Naruto in shock. "How? I found some of his remains in Ba Sing Se. Why, I don't know, but I also found something else. That battle he was killed in, he didn't die from Earth Kingdom soldiers. He had been killed by agents of Ozai, so he could lay claim to the throne. I found this message in Jin's belongings," he said, handing the scroll to Iroh. Both father and son opened it up and looked inside. After a few minutes, Iroh's rage showed as he crunched the scroll in his hand, which was now shaking. "That bastard," he said in quite anger. Ursa came up to him, took the scroll and reading it as well after trying uncrumple it a bit, and she was horrified as well. Iroh burned the scroll and took 3 deep breaths, while Lu Ten, also angry, was confused, wondering what was going on. Naruto picked up Hikari. "Come darling Grandpa Iroh, he needs to speak with Grandma Ursa, Mommy, Uncle Zuko and Uncle Lu Ten, let us give them privacy," he said softly. She nodded with a yawn, laying her head on his chest, and they nodded to the others and walked back inside the home. He told her a bedtime story and quietly left the room. He didn't get 3 feet before he was embraced by Iroh. "Thank Naruto, you don't know how much this means to me," he said with a much happier tone. "I have a pretty good idea." Breaking, he looked to Lu Ten, who came up and bowed to him. "Thank you for bringing me back. Think nothing of it, family is important. That's all that matters," he said with a bow of his own. He and Lu Ten shook hands. He reminded Naruto of Lee, just less youthful. The two walked off and he headed to his own room. Once inside, he was met by Azula, who looked deep in thought. "Something you need?" he asked, surprised to see her there. She was broken from her thoughts, looking up at Naruto. "Yes. I wanted to thank you for bringing back my cousin," she said with a small smile. He nodded, but knew there was something else as well. "Also, I wanted to apologize for ghosting you before. I have been lost in my feelings, unsure what to do. When I am around you, I feel different, calm, at peace. You make me feel things I haven't before or in a very long time," she explained. He said nothing but stood in front of her as she spoke. "I like you, Naruto. I like how you are kind, caring and gentle. The fact you contain so much power and are not like my father amazes me greatly. I have been wrestling with this for the last couple months, but I think I understand now. I am in love with you." She finished, looking at him with major blush on her face. He gave her another eye smile as he spoke. "Before I met you, there had been a girl I had loved once, and though loved me, turns out I was wrong. When she found out I held a great power in me, she became afraid and turned her back instead, going for the man who was once a dear friend to me, the same one who tried killing me when we fought the first time and who succeeded the second time. I found out by accident and it broke my heart, made me very afraid to seek love again. I have come to see I have feelings for you as well. I think you're strong, beautiful and has a softness to you that when I see with Hikari makes my heart skip a beat," he said truthfully. This shocked her. She didn't know he had loved before, but it also made her angry to hear he had been betrayed as well. She hated people like that with a passion. But looking at him, she got lost in his eyes, beautiful blue eyes. She felt like she was swimming. Their faces had inched closer as she raised her hand to his face, pulling down the mask to see his scarred cheeks as her other hand came up, placing both on his face. Their lips finally met, and it felt like an explosion went off inside them both. A shiver went up her spine as she felt him wrap his arms around her and pull her in. Soon their tongues met. He felt at peace, like this is where he should have been from the beginning. After a few minutes they broke away, looking at each other. She smiled at him happily. "I think I am in love with you too, princess," he said finally. She chuckled a bit. "What does this make us now?" she asked. "Well, very happy for one. But would you like to give us a try and see where it goes?" he asked her. She nodded to him and they met for another kiss to seal the deal. When the door opened up and in came a sleepy Hikari who looked like she had been crying. "Mommy, Daddy. I had bad dreams," she said, wiping away her tears. Azula's newfound motherly instincts kicked in and let go of him and picked her new little girl in, concerned, kissing her bed head. "I'm sorry, sweetie, would you like to sleep with Mommy and Daddy tonight?" she asked softly, with lots of love and concern. She nodded and was placed in bed and soon crashed out with the stuffed animal Ursa got for her. "I will be right back," Azula said. He nodded as she left. He got into a pair of sleeping shorts and got ready for bed. Once done, the door opened up again and in came Azula in a pair of sleeping shorts and a cut-off shirt showing her firm stomach. The couple got into bed as well on each side of their child. "Good night, Azula. Good night, Naruto." A small kiss and they went to sleep as well. Naruto was now training on to control not only his bending better using chakra control exercise, but also his taijutsu as well, because let's be honest, this kid as of right now sucks. Hikari watched as her papa showed off his skills. She was entranced. It was like he danced across the floor, innocent eye-widened with a gaping mouth. Azula chuckled, brushing some hair back from her little face. Gone was the lithe frame. She had meat on her body and her skin glowed with a healthy tan. Ursa giggled at her little grandbaby. She loved seeing her eyes pop. She was in love with her. Being a grandmother still left her in awe. Iroh, Zuko and Lu Ten brought tea and snacks out. The backyard was the hot spot. Naruto had been training the benders all morning and was now on Aang, who was barely hanging on. The poor boy was on his last legs, sweating profusely and panting, while Naruto was grinning under his mask. "Okay kid, break, you did well today," he said. He nodded and plopped nearby, making Toph and Ty Lee laugh at him. "I'm so glad my pain amuses you," he mumbled sourly before conking out. Naruto came up and got some water. Looking at Hikari, Wood was just amazed by her papa. He knelt down. "Did you enjoy the show?" he asked. She nodded. "Wow, you amazing," she said. "Would you like to see something cool?" he asked her. She nodded with vigor, as did a few others. He got back up and walked several feet away. Making the snake sign, the ground began shaking, and wooden tendrils came out of the ground, forming a tree right there. It had pink flowers on it and smelled heavenly. They all looked on minus Aang in wonder. "What is this?" Mai asked, curious. "It's called a sakura tree. Sakura in my native tongue means cherry blossom," he said. He grabbed 2 blooming pink flowers and picked it off and walked up and placed them in Hikari and Azla's hair. Azla blushed at the action. She still wasn't used to this type of affection or being a quote girly girl, but it made her feel good when he did things like this for her. "Thank you Papa," Hikari said, hugging him and giving him a big kiss on his cheek. A sudden chill crept up Naruto's spine as he looked to the east and narrowed his eyes. Something was amiss and it didn't feel good at all. Hikari was playing with Appa, as the giant bison liked the little girl. She was gentle with him and brushed him, which he liked greatly. Off to the side, Zuko was watching his niece play with the bison as Katara came up with some tea. "Do you think we can win this and have true peace?" she asked him. Zuko looked down for a moment. "I want to believe we can, but I also don't want to get my hope up either. For all we know, my father and Kaitsura could have a plan ready that even Naruto doesn't know about. We can't continue to rely on him forever." She looked at him and nodded. She knew he was right, and as much as she wanted to believe in Aang, he wasn't ready at all. "Well, it's a good thing you won't have to." They both turned to see Naruto coming out. "I am not here to fight this for you, that is why I am training you, so you can instead. But I think I might have to be the one to face you father and sister. Aang just isn't ready, and he just isn't willing to cross the threshold," Naruto said as he watched his little girl running around with Momo, who joined in her fun. "Besides, I will do what I can, but if people aren't willing to have faith in themselves and their fellow humans, you can't have true peace if no one is willing to try to understand each other." The couple nodded, deep in their own thoughts as well. Could be so willing to understand like he does. This was the real question. "Do you like my sister?" Zuko asked. Katara was taken aback by this for a moment, not having expected it. Naruto was silent for a moment. "Do I feel an attraction to her?" "Yes." "Could I learn to love her?" "Yes I do. I want to see where it goes and what could be for us and Hikari, but I will not force her to do anything." Nothing else was said as the squealing of Hikari was heard as Appa licked her face. Azla in her room sat on her bed deep in her own thoughts. All this was new to her, and it was both frightening and exciting at the same time. But a smile graced her lips as she thought about Hikari and how being a mother has really changed her perspectives on a few things, plus having her own mother around made it so much easier. She looked put the window. "I can do this. I want to. No more fighting and death. I want peace and my own family," she said, looking down at the scene before smiling at Hikari. "To be a wife, a mother to my own children, yes. I want that." Looking down at Naruto, she gently bit her lower lip. Nodding to herself, she began mentally preparing for the next stage of her life, unaware of the hell her father is bringing to Earth Kingdom very soon. Naruto stood at the mirror glancing over his appearance. He fought gods and monsters and never broke a sweat, but right now he felt like jelly. Wearing a blue shirt with gray pants and blue boots, he nods to himself, trying to muster up his courage. His first real date with Azla since they confessed. All he could was hope it turned out right and he didn't fuck anything up. With no real experience in this area, he sighed to himself and threw the old ideas out of his head. Sakura and Hinata were no longer there. This was a new start. At the same time, Ursa and Hikari were with Azla, who was getting ready as well. She had on a black and red dress that went to her ankles. Red open-toed flats showing off her painted toes. Her hair was teased up a bit in front while putting into a bun with a clip her mother gave to her. Putting on some red eyeshadow and lipstick, she placed a necklace with a red crystal on it on her neck. It was similar to the necklace Tsunade had given Naruto years prior. Hikari had one in blue, and Naruto kept the original green one. She turned to her mother and daughter and asked nervously, "How do I look?" "You so pretty mama, like a fairy," the toddler said softly. Big eyes looked at her with excitement and a slight twinkle that made Ursa giggle. Azla blushed with a smile, calming down a bit. She petted her head, making the beam. "You look lovely, baby. I am proud of the young woman you have become," the smile never leaving her face. Azula place a bracelet, Onxie with a ruby in the center with the kanji for love on both sides, that Naruto bought her for birthday last week on her left wrist as she looked over her painted nails. She had cut them back after she accidentally scratched Hikari with helping her change. Now they are closer to the skin, but Azula still winced seeing the scratch on her little hand. She nodded to them and sat down for a moment when they heard the knock on the door and it opened to reveal Naruto there. "Good evening ladies," he said with a soft head bow. Ursa smiled, nodding at his manners, while Hikari beamed at him and gave him a big hug, which earned her a kiss on the cheek making her giggle. Azula stood up and walked to him with her coat, as it was colder outside now, and the pair headed out. Walking out in the early night, Azula on his arm making small talk, but the few incidents prior and the talking to given by Naruto, many of Amashu's residents held a higher respect for him as well as fear. Plus it gave them a lot to think about, and the attacks on Hikari stopped. Azula smiled to herself, glad this date finally happened. He was what every princess dreamt of. Kind, caring, strong, assertive, and the fact that they were raising a little girl together and had shared their first kiss was also a boon. Naruto on the other hand was internally freaking out. He had never been a real date. He has saved princesses and damsels in distress and have been kissed and thanked, but never has he been on a date before, first time for everything he guessed. Making it to the fancy restaurant, they found their seating on the second level and was treated to soft music in the background as they ordered. "Azula, I want to thank you for coming out with me tonight. To be quite honest, you the first real date I have ever been on. My life has been one fight after another, and I have never experienced this side of it before," he said, taking a breath. She went wide-eyed of course, but then softened as she reached over and took his hand in hers. "Well, this isn't my first, it is with a man I have come to love. Plus you being flustered like this is rather cute." She smirked at him with a slight giggle escaping her lips. Hearing that made him feel a bit better and calmed down, and they continued talking long after they finished their dinner and dessert and they went for a walk. Azula rubbing her full belly, leaning into her lover contently while Naruto smiled at her. Suddenly he picked her up, making her squeak as he walked up a building, shocking many who were watching. Once at the top, he sat down with her in front of him and looked up at the night sky, seeing the stars which popped, the cool night breeze whipping around them. Azula gasped after hitting his shoulder and telling him not to do that again, which he complied with, and they sat there in blissful silence as they watched the stars dance and the moon shine brightly. Azula soon enough felt the drowse hit her and closed her eyes, being embraced in strong and loving arms, passed on to sleep. Naruto looked down at her and smiled as he lowered his head and kissed her cheek, making her smile, and she snuggled deeper into him. "I love you too, Azula," he whispered, and picked her up and headed home. Ursa looked on amused as she watched Naruto bring home a sleeping Azula in his arms, smiling and soundly snoring with a bit of drool leaving her mouth. Iroh opened the door for him and chuckled, seeing his niece acting like a girl and a teenager. "Good night, I assume?" Ursa said, amused. He nodded. "I don't think I will be to top this," he said with a chuckle, bringing her into the house. Letting her to get room, he pulled off her shawl, her dress, and finally her shoes and placed her in bed, and just as he was about to leave she grabbed his wrist. He turned to look at her and saw she was still asleep and could hear her speak slightly. "Stay with me, please," she mumbled. Getting out of his clothes, he got into bed and was grabbed like a stuffed bear. Closing his eyes, he fell asleep as well. Dawn appeared the next morning and all was as it should be. Naruto woke up to not only feeling Azula, but a little pressure on his chest, and saw Hikari sleeping with her stuffed companion. While he was no longer sleepy, he didn't want to move yet and pulled out a book to read. Azula soon groaned and fluttered her eyes open to see her lover awake reading, then looked down and saw Hikari sleeping on his chest, but looked at her general direction with a smile. She traced a finger over her little face softly. These two made her feel so alive. She couldn't wait to be married and have a child of her own with Naruto. Stopped as she blushed. The thought of intimacy with him made her quiver, but also made her go wide-eyed. Is this what she really wanted? To be a wife and mother? To spend the rest of her life like this? She soon narrowed them in though. Yes, she wanted this more than anything. But another thought hit her. Aitsura, her older half-sister, she had been eyeing her Naruto like a piece of meat, even giving him that scar across the bridge of his nose. Though it was hidden by the mask, she knew it was still there. "Mama." Azula was broken from her thoughts when she looked back at Naruto's chest and saw a sight that made her heart swell and almost brought tears to her eyes. Hikari was now awake, looking at her with innocent eyes that shone a deep love for the woman who became her mother and a smile that said, "I adore you." "Hello baby," she replied back. "I love you, Mama," she said to her softly. That was it. She felt her heart explode. She reached over and kissed her face all over, making her giggle. Naruto had watched from the corner of his eyes and smiled the whole time. These are his girls and he would raise hell for them. Azula let tears go. "I love you too, my sweet Hikari." The family of three had a wonderful morning and would be a moment they would remember for years to come. Too bad it would be the last for a time. Naruto put not only Team Avatar through hell, but also the Fire Rebels as well. In the coming weeks after his date with Azula, Naruto trained their bodies, Liu Tan trained their minds, and Iroh trained their spirits. But the one problem they came across was Aang's refusal to kill, which both he and Naruto butted heads over several times. It was becoming a reoccurring problem for him. The air nomad was set in his beliefs about not taking a life despite the fact he would saving many more lives in tandem. Naruto, though frustrated, showed no sign of it. He let it go for now. If the boy couldn't do it, he wouldn't accept the consequences later. On was finishing up a three-way spar with Zuko, Tara and Toph, while Sokka was training with Mai, Ty Lee and Suki. Azula was mediating. For now she had been coming to grips with her anger issues and abandonment from her father much faster than Zuko had, especially after the wound on his face. Hikari sat with Ursa and Iroh watching them. Her eyes were big with awe. She wanted to learn how to bend like her mommy and uncle. She knew her daddy didn't bend but used something else. But it made her sad she couldn't use her daddy's power, but still he would teach her what he could, and she was looking forward to that. Naruto at the same time was working on a seal for his father's Hirshin. The seals his father made worked only for him, so he had been at working during his free time rewriting the seals on the dry-pronged kunai, and after what felt like weeks he finally completed it. A smile under his mask was the only thing he shows, though no one else saw it or knew. He stood up and grabbed the weapon and without warning, threw at the far end of the backyard about a good 30 yards away, where he vanished in yellow light and appeared by the kunai. All stopped and saw the light appear as Naruto reappeared before them all. It was much a shock for them all, as they have never seen anything like this before. What was that? Sokka asked, pulling his jaw shut. Naruto, putting it back, turned his head and spoke. That was called the Hirshin, or the Flying Thunder God. It was created by Tobirama Senju the Nidaime, and was refined and perfected by the Yondaime, my father Minato Namikaze. How does it work? Iroh asked, curious as he held Hikari. Through the use of Yuan Jutsu, or the art of seals, he said, not wanting to explain it in too much detail at the moment. Iroh nodded and felt he wouldn't understand anyways, but still it was fascinating. Soon enough everyone headed off to do their own things now. Aang in the meantime had other plans. He needed to attain the Avatar state and to find a way to beat Ozai without killing him. Kaitsura was walking down the corridors of the temple, a big smirk on her face as she opened a door and to show several bodies, many with bruises and bloody skin. Like the accommodations? She asked them condescendingly. No one could speak as the light groaning was all you could hear. Now then, let us get my prize, she said to herself as one of the elementals came in with a sack, and the two walked away for a very important announcement. At the same time, Fire Nation blimps appeared over Amashi with the screens on, then turning on as Kaitsura appeared on them. Attention, you all know who I am Fire Lady Kaitsura, and I am here for one reason. The Earth Kingdom has something, or rather someone I want. I wish to make a trade the newcomer for them. The screen moves to the bloodied people and the crying sack before it goes back to her. These are the parents and siblings of Mai and Ty Lee. If I don't get the newcomer, they die. You have 3 days. She cut the feed and the blimps left. All the while those in the know were in shock. Mai and Ty Lee couldn't comprehend what they just saw. Their families had been made an example of and now were hurt. Sudden realization, and the pair soon lost it, crying in fear of their families, as Sokka, Zuko and Azula came to them for comfort. Naruto though knew what she was doing, but now he was stuck in a predicament that would require him to save lives at a cost. Azula also knew but didn't like it. As she came up to him, Naruto, she asked him, taking a hold of his hand. He gently squeezed her hand in his. You know I have to do this. Mai and Ty Lee will not lose their loved ones for my sake. Besides, she threatened to kill Tun Tun, who is still a baby. I won't have that one. My conscience is, he said sternly to her, making all know he was serious. Just remember, you still have me and our daughter to think of. I can't lose you. I just confesses my feelings. Don't make me regret it, please, she begged him in a soft voice. He turned to her and his eyes softened as he lowered his face to hers, pulling down his mask and kissing her lips. She closed her eyes, relishing and remembering the taste. As he pulled away, he looked over and saw Hikari asleep in Ursa's arms. What do I tell her when she wakes? Azula asked. Tell her that daddy went on a quest and will be home to see her again soon, and that I love her, he said softly, looking at the baby he saved and fell in love with. She nodded but didn't let it go of his hand. Stay with me tonight, please, she asked him. He noticed the glistening in her eyes and knew she felt conflicted, so he agreed. Ursa knew that look and said she and Iroh would take care of Hikari tonight. At the same time, Zuko, Sokka, Toph and Azula, who left Naruto, now went to Mai and Ty Lee, who had finally calmed down and were giving sleeping aids and were put to bed to try and get rid of the fatigue. Night soon fell and all was quiet in the mansion. Naruto was in the room reading when he noticed the bathroom door slightly open. Curious, he got up and went to the door and saw Azula with her back to him. He went wide-eyed, seeing her toned pale skin, her body flawless. He was entranced by this, and before he knew it, opened the door and slowly came inside. Azula was pulling off her towel from her as she wanted to shower when she felt two strong arms embrace her. At first it surprised her, then she noticed the scent and the aura and knew it was her lover, and she smiled. Would you like me to wash your back, darling, he said in a husky voice near her ear. She shuddered under his breath and nodded to him as she turned and grabbed his face and smashed her lips to his, which to delved into wholeheartedly. finally breaking away for air, a thick strand of saliva between their tongues as they looked into each other's eyes. I want you to make love to me, I want to have your scent all over me, I want my sister to know you belong to me. She said, heavy in her voice, the slight growl never before heard. I obey my queen, just know this: next time there will be no protection, and you will be carrying my baby, only you forevermore, you will bear my children, he said with a slight growl. Having the 9 tails in him for so many years, he gained several traits from the fox. The next day came and Naruto headed out early. It killed him not to speak to Hikari, but he couldn't handle the distraction right now. He made it out of the gates as a Fire Nation ship was posted. He walked to the ship and surrendered to them, who were in shock, thinking he wouldn't have done so. Once out of their shock, they placed cuffs on him and they made it onto the ship and began preparations for takeoff. Once in the brig, Naruto saw he was alone, so it gave him time to think of a game plan to not only rescue the girls' families, but learn about any of Ozai's weaknesses. Though he heard a cough next to him and saw women a couple years older than him. She had black hair and chocolate-colored eyes, but she looked pale and sickly. He got to her and saw how sick she was. He pulled out a vial of green liquid and poured it down her throat, and she soon fell asleep. Now he sat there and meditated. He needed to be centered for what was to occur. 3 days later they arrived in the fire capital, where Kaitsura waited. Dressed in her formal best, a smirk played on her lips. She now had her prize, she just needed to break him and make him hers. Even if little Azula laid claim to him, she could never truly satisfy a man like him better than she could. The ship was now within sight and her excitement grew. Once the ship was put down, she saw the ramp go down and her prisoners appeared. Naruto and the girl named June, whom he saved and healed, were now walking down the ramp in chains. June was a former soldier of Earth Kingdom when she met and fell in love with Liu Ten, son of Iroh, during the wanting days of the war before it went cold. But when she heard about his death, she fled, took up bounty hunting again. Naruto explained how he brought him back, and if she still loved him they could try to make it work. It shocked her to hear him say that, but if he was alive again, then she would go find him and love him again. Soon enough they made it to the palace, where they were sent to the dungeons till such a time as Kaitsura was ready to make her move. But keeping her end of the bargain, she placed all of the prisoners back on the ship and sent them off with a little surprise. Naruto sat on the floor of the cell with his eyes closed and centered himself for what is to come. He heard footsteps come and saw it was Ozai and Kaitsura with triumphant smirks, then soon frowned when they noticed how calm he was, like being here wasn't a blimp on his radar. But that didn't deter them from making a skeptical out of the whole thing. You have one choice: pledge allegiance to me and the Fire Nation, or the traitors' families die, Kaitsura said, looking at him. Well, since I don't trust you not to keep your word, let them go first with assurance they won't be harmed, then I will do so. I also want to watch to make sure this happens, Naruto said, looking at them seriously. They agreed, seeing as he was cooperating, but frowned at his lack of respect and his still strong will, so getting him out of the cell they left, not seeing June next door to him give a small smirk. Making their way out of the dungeon, he kept a calm presence and kept his eyes ahead. After this, you will pledge yourself and then you will marry me and give me a child. They will be raised to be the next great Fire Lord like my father, and this world will forever remain under Fire Nation rule. Our destiny will be fulfilled, Kaitsura said with a haughty smirk. Well, that sounds like a nice plan. Keep in mind, Mother Nature rarely lets us keep brush strokes in line and allow the flow of time to ebb how we wish, Naruto said sagely with looking at her. Destiny is ours to control, we make the fate of our choosing, and we will be remembered as gods. She spoke arrogantly, not taking his words to heart. Life finds a way, was all Naruto replied back before staying silent. Finally they made it to airship, where the families were, though bruised and beaten, alive, to which Naruto was satisfied by and nodded to them. The captives got on the ship and it took off, not seeing a straggler with them who had taken out the Fire Nation soldiers and took control of the ship and was flying back to Amashu, where Iroh and Ursa were. June could finally see her love again and live a life of peace and become the wife and mother she desperately dreamed about. At the same time, the June in the cell smirked at the guards nearby when she began glowing and exploded, destroying most of the dungeon, which caused most of the guard to travel down and find out what happened. This was opening Naruto needed and broke his shackles as he was attacked by Kaitsura and Ozai. Both several clones were key points exploding where they needed to, which created chaos needed. You planned this, didn't you? Ozai stated rather heatedly. Yes, I did. Once I knew the captives were safe, it was now a necessity to get them out and back to where they belong, he explained, sending a powerful wind attack at them, catching them off guard and blasting them away. Giving the sign, June took off with the captives and headed back to Earth Country, leaving Naruto behind to make sure they escaped. But a strong fire blast attack was sent hurtling to him, which made him dodge, and now was in a battle against Kaitsura, who was both strong and fierce, especially now she was angered. But still he kept his defense up, though he must admit she was quite powerful. Still, it was nothing he couldn't handle as shock waves were coming off their blows. Aitsura was not happy, her perfectly laid plans were now in ruins. He played her like a fool, and now she was gonna be taking her vengeance out on this hunky bastard. The two began their fight, with Naruto holding the upper hand, as he remained calm and collected. Aitsura on the other hand was not all that happy. Her frustration and annoyance was making her slip up, and Naruto capitalized it. It was then Ozai joined in and began a handicapped with Naruto holding his own. Jin now in full control of the ship set coordinates to the Earth Kingdom. Looking back seeing Naruto taking both the Phoenix King and Fire Lady and hold his own she knew. Then he was stronger than he let on and was glad to not be on his bad side. Soon enough she left out of sight and could only hope Naruto made back okay. June had made it back to Earth Kingdom and set down near Amashi where Ursa and the others were there to greet them. Landing the ship rather roughly, the passengers were able to make it off the ships and needing medical treatment as the Mai and Tai Li running up to their families, relief filling them as they saw they were majorly okay. Azula in the meantime looked around and saw Naruto was not anywhere and her eyes narrowed slightly. "Where is daddy?" The little voice of Hikari asked aloud coming up to her mommy. Azula snapped out of her thoughts as she looked down and gave her an unsure look. She didn't know what to say. "Right here and he's gonna gobble you up," the voice said picking up Hikari from behind and began nibbling on her making her giggle and squeal. Azula looked and felt relief seeing him there looking okay. It was then June came over with a shocked look. "How did you?" She trailed off now fully confused, he had given them the time to escape. Naruto looked over and just gave an eye smile. Aitsura smirked seeing her obsession with a blade in his shoulder. Now on his knees the four elements surrounding him, while Naruto looked ahead right at her. "Well, it seems like your little rescue wasn't a complete success," Ozai said with a mocking chuckle. "It doesn't matter, the others are safe and my mission was complete. Whatever happens now, well," he said leaving it off, calmly and at peace. It was then a red flag hit Aitsura, while her father snorted with a scoff. "Kill him," Ozai said aloud. Aitsura went wide-eyed. "No, stop," she tried to say, but was too late. One brought out a blade and slammed it into Naruto's head, only there was no blood, and he smirked. Boom. The explosion rocked the whole area, destroying part of the structure. Aitsura let out a groan and a cough as she opened her eyes and saw she was under part of the structure along with her half-brother and another member of the elementals. They soon began digging themselves out and found their way out, seeing a body nearby. On shock they went to check it out and found the water element now dead along with the earth element seriously injured. Nearby they saw the Phoenix King groaning, several bruises and what looks to be a broken leg and arm, along with blood caked on his head, but alive. "Get him to medical now," Aitsura said to the nearby fire soldiers, getting her father to help. Watching as they got him away, Aitsura and other two looked at each other and realized they underestimated the newcomer and he used their arrogance against them and played them for fools once again. She gritted her teeth. While she would still get him in the end, she would have him punished and broken like a good dog so he wouldn't bark against her again. Now she was feeling the anger. It was time to take this seriously. She could not screw around anymore. But that she walked off to go get cleaned up and call for an emergency war council. Azula and the others remained quiet as Naruto explained how he managed to make a clone of himself to swap it out so he could make it to the ship and leave, and then just examined how they exploded his clone. Now they would wait to see what Ozai and his ilk would do now that this had happened. While everyone was glad he was okay, Ong though frowned and felt was unnecessary and made his displeasure known. He was against the use of mortal force like that. But once again Naruto tried to impart some common sense on the boy, but he was too set in his pacifist ways and it was talking to a brick wall. It got the point now. Naruto finally made the comment that religion, while fine for philosophers and time wasters, didn't really work in the real world because not every could worry about the future, because don't get to have a future when it's dictated by another with evil intentions. To protect that which you hold close to you, you must be prepared to shed blood of the wicked, because memories aren't as forgiving as humanity is. He went right up to the kid and spoke to him with a serious tone. The life of one evil man is more important than the lives of many innocent people. Then your belief is no more evil than the indifference of good men, Naruto said. Ong looked at him. The monk always said life is sacred, and to take a life you lose a part of yourself, there is always a better way, he shot back. But at what cost? The air nomads are gone forever because of that belief. They allowed evil to dictate their final exit. You are all that's left, and what happens if you choose to save Ozai's life and he kills you after? It will have all been for naught, and the war will continue on without the avatar. Is the price of losing a part of yourself so great that you can sit by and do nothing when the innocents cry out for help? Can you say all good things comes to those that wait? That kind of belief is dangerous and an evil all own. It's time to wake up, kid. Wisdom, experience, philosophy, benevolence didn't work for your people, and now Ozai has all but conquered this world. Words are not enough. Your Kami herself asked him to teach you, train you and prepare you for this final confrontation. How can I, if you open your mind to knowledge, new thought processes? Even if you manage to take away his bending, he could still find a way to have you killed. Death is a release, not a punishment. To save this world you must look into the abyss, but you must never blink, Naruto explained. Aang looked at him with surprise and contemplation, but also bristled at calling his belief evil and his people cowards. That wasn't fair. They were simple monks, not warriors. The way to peace was through pacifism. He believed that violence never solved the answer. Violence solves nothing. How can you achieve peace through violence? He asked coldly. You can't, only through understanding, but too much blood has been shed here. Too many people have lost their faith in the Avatar, and it's time to fight back. Once Ozai is dead, can you pave the path to peace and try to teach understanding? Until Ozai and Kaitsura are alive, they will continue on this path, and all will be paved in blood. Can you carry that on your conscience, little monk? Naruto asked, done with this conversation as he walked away. Aang said nothing, but knew he had a plan. He would find a way. No one would have to die. He would make sure of that. He walked away as well. His time here had come to an end. He needed to continue on alone. Aang, where are you going? Katara asked him. To find my own path. I will bend to his will, nor will I succumb to bloodshed. There is always another way, and Ozai's life is just as important as anyone else's. This is where we part. Goodbye, he said sourly, grabbing his belongings and getting Appa. So that's it, you let the innocent suffer, all for your selfish beliefs. What about everyone who sacrificed their lives to help you, my father who languishes in prison? Is your beliefs more important than people's lives? Is your ego so fragile that you can handle constructive criticism? We need you here to help us. You still need to finish your bending training. You can just walk away because you know to a certain degree Naruto is right. Not everything can be solved with peace. Sokka spoke to him. You don't know anything. These are my beliefs. Those were my people and I am angry they are gone, but if I compromise, how can I face them in the afterlife? I am sorry about your father and the people who have died, but I can't. I won't compromise. I will find my own way to defeat the Phoenix King. I don't need his help. I need to walk a different path. We will meet again one day. Goodbye, Sokka, he said, flying off away from Amashu. Sokka shook his head. It was foolish to try and change his mind. That bastard, I always knew he was a coward, Azula sneered at him, while not overly emotional. Knew enough to respect the dead and those fighting for a cause they believed in. We don't need him, maybe it's best the Avatar dies out anyways. It has caused more trouble than anything, Zuko explained. Naruto came back out to see Appa off in the distance. He will see that his narrow-mindedness will come back to bite him. But for now we continue on. As for your father, I know where he is and am having clones infiltrate Boiling Rock. He will be okay, Naruto said to the water kids. Katara nodded with a big eatery smile, while Sokka felt glad to have an ally like Naruto on their side. It was then Sokka came up to him. I have to ask this, but can you bring back our mom? I know you have already brought back one, but please, I beg you. We were very young when the Fire Nation took her from us, and I just want her alive again, please, he said in tears as he pulled out a small bag of her ashes he kept after burning her body. Katara couldn't believe he still kept his. She had spread her back home. Naruto looked at him, then without warning took the ashes. Well, what are waiting for? Set up an area for this, he said with a small smirk under his face mask. Sokka and Katara couldn't believe it, feeling hope and excitement course through them. Ursa and Iron looked proud of Naruto. He was a great man. The warrior who understood life was precious, but knew that sometimes you had to make the difficult choices for the betterment of others. That was what Aang failed to understand. Balance. The world needed balance. The area was ready in the style of the water tribe, and he placed a pile of ashes in the center as Katara and Sokka picked their fingers, taking a few drops of blood each and drenching the ashes. He made his hands seals as the Rinnegan activated. In rebirth. Act of life. Slamming his hands down, and the area began glowing much like it had with Lu Ten, who stood by with Yoon holding on to him like he was going to vanish. In the span of a few minutes a body took form and the glowing died down, and there she lay. Sokka and Katara held their breaths till they heard her groan, and she opened her eyes and looked around confused. But where am I? She asked softly as she slowly got up into a sitting position. Mom, mommy, two voices she hadn't heard in years yell. She turned around and there she saw two familiar faces as tears left her eyes. Her babies all grown up. Sokka and Katara, also in tears, raced to her and hugged her as the reunited family. Naruto smiled. That was his favorite part, when he felt a hand in his and saw Azula standing next to him with a soft smile, with little Hikari next to her. It was a sweet moment to say the least. It made the others smile happily. Soon enough the trio broke away as she looked at them both. Look at you both, so big now. But how did I get here? I was killed by that southern raider, she asked. It was because of a friend. He brought you back to us. He has power unlike anything we have ever seen, Mom. He has been helping us. This war is within our grasp and we can finally have true peace, Katara said, not wanting to let go of her mother. Who is this friend of yours? She asked with a smile. Naruto, Azula and Hikari came up to them as Sokka and Katara helped their mother up, and she got a good look at him and was amazed. He looked like nothing she had ever seen before. "I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, pleasure to meet you ma'am," he said to her with a bow. "I owe you my life, I thank you for this," she said feeling emotional again. "You owe me nothing and I did this for them because it wasn't your time and now you have a second chance to enjoy family once again," he said to her. She nodded and then everyone else came up and introduced themselves to her. It amazed her that the royal fire family was against Ozai as well, and to meet the famed dragon of the west and see he was just like everyone else. It humbled and surprised her, though made her feel a bit awkward and bad for them as well. To see a family so spilt and divided was never a happy moment for her. They spent the rest of the time catching her up on what she has missed out on. Though sad about the war, was glad that her family was okay, but was disappointed in hearing about the Avatar. But hearing about Naruto and his story and his power, seeing a bit of it had given her something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Soon enough it was dinner time, and Naruto made another great staple. Aya had not expected it, neither had June, who were now shaking from the euphoria they were feeling. It got laughs and the atmosphere turned lighter and happier. As they made conversation, Kaya was shocked though. Katara was in love with Prince Zuko, who smiled at her and showed he cared for her just as much, but Sokka, she couldn't believe he had two girls wanting him. After dinner, everyone headed off to bed, Sokka and Katara with their mother tonight, just wanting to know she was real and that she would be there in the morning. I laid on bed with her children on either side of her, making her smile. She couldn't believe she had been given a second chance. Hearing her children snore, she giggled, but she couldn't sleep just yet, so she slowly got up and made her way out of the room, where she came out into the main room heading to the kitchen when she heard sniffling and came out to see what that was. She looked and saw Naruto in a chair holding a crying Hikari to his chest. "Oh, what happened?" she asked the pair, coming out into the kitchen. "She had a bad dream, and I wasn't asleep yet. Her mother needed sleep, so I took the turn. Please it," he said kindly to the older woman. She nodded with a grateful smile, sitting across from them. "Feels weird being back, doesn't it?" Naruto asked her. "It is a bit. When I died my heart broke knowing I wouldn't be seeing my children or my husband again. I can never thank you for doing this when you didn't have to," she said. "It's what I do. I don't believe in fate or destiny. I believe that one path is the right one or not. Unlike the Avatar, I don't believe in pacifism. The world needs balance, moderation. Some people are beyond redeemable. The life of one is not worth thousands. I will do what I must to end this war and then settle down with Azula and Hikari and live out the rest of my life," he explained to her. Aya nodded. That sounded wonderful to her and what she wanted most. Soon enough, got some water and she went back to her room and went to sleep, with Naruto following soon after. Kaboom! The metal door came flying off the hinges as several explosions went off nearby. Inside the room was an older man dressed as a member of the Water Tribe. He looked like an older Sokka, and Naruto had found his target. The man was up and looking at the one who broke open his cell. "Who are you?" he asked, tired and sweaty. "Your rescue, my name is Naruto, and we're getting you back to your family in Earth Country," he said, coming to give him a canteen of cold water. The man took it and drank it, feeling himself feel better than before. But that Hidako followed Naruto as he got 3 more of his men out as well, then made to destroy the island prison. Making up to the lift, they headed out while the Fire Nation soldiers were busy stopping the island from imploding on itself. By the time they figured anything out, Naruto and Water, Earth and Rogue Fire members were long gone. Aang was back up at the Air Nomad Temple looking over scrolls and other bits to see if he could find a way to stop this war without taking a life. Going back to his studies, he looked and saw about an island off the coast of Earth Country, and it talked about its connection with the Avatar. Smiling to himself, he made some food and went to sleep. He would go first thing in the morning. Next morning, the compound woke up to breakfast courtesy of Naruto. Of course, Sokka and Katara were happy beyond belief seeing their mother was alive again. Breakfast was just about ready when a knock at the door was heard, and Sokka went to get it. Opening the door, he was met by a familiar face. "Dad?" he asked, thinking he was still asleep. "Sokka," he said happily as his son hugged him all of a sudden. "Daddy," Katara said as she raced off to hug him as well. He laughed as his kids hugged him, till he looked behind them and saw her. His eyes wide with disbelief as he looked upon the visage of his beautiful wife. "Kaya?" he asked softly, unable to comprehend what he is seeing. "Hidako," she said, feeling tears leave her eyes, but a happy smile on her lips. The older man got up and slowly came over to her, wondering if he was dreaming or was dead. He reached out and gently touched her, and found she was real and let the tears flow as well as he grabbed her and held her close to him. Sokka and Katara felt at peace, their family reunited and whole once again. Phoenix King Ozai lay in bed asleep, his arm and leg wrapped up. The attack, while not as devastating as it could have been, was now looked at like a terrorist attack, and Kaitsura was going to use this to her advantage and put the war on the fast track. She would win and get the newcomer and remake this world in her image. Coming into the room, she looked over at her father and with a sick evil grin plunged the dagger she had into his heart, and the sound of his breath was heard. The man was a fool anyways, and it cost her the perfect chance to have her slave. He would pay with his life. He was no longer needed. Wiping off her prints, she opened the window nearby, placed a piece of fabric from Naruto's shirt on his hand, and then a few seconds later shot off like a rocket, calling for soldiers. Another change was now put into effect. Ozai was dead and she just framed Naruto for it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring this what if with me. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more videos like this. Your support truly makes a difference, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Until next time, take care and stay tuned for more.